Uh, hey folks, so hey folks, I hope you all are doing great today. So today we are talking about Microsoft Azure fundamentals, and today we have our guest speaker, expert speaker as Aman. He's Microsoft certified cloud trainer, cloud engineering analyst, JDSE core member, left cloud captain, and community ambassador at Indian Open Source Community. He's multi-phase personality with expertise in cloud and DevOps. I hope you enjoyed listening to him. Over to you, Aman.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining in. And yeah, thanks Lakshit for that introduction. So shall we move on to the slides? Yes, Lakshit?
Yes, sure, we can go ahead.
Yeah. Just let me know if you once you are able to see it properly. Are you able to see it?
Yes, we are. It's visible to us.
Lakshit, I hope my slides are visible and I'm audible properly.
Yes, everything is fine. You are good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we are to discuss Microsoft Azure fundamentals and let's get started. So this is what Microsoft says about us. So yeah, thanks for joining in and yeah, let's move on. So, yes, this is a small introduction of mine. Um, I'm MCT, and yes, I'm working as a cloud engineer analyst at CS. This will be our today's agenda: cloud concepts, core Azure services, and core solutions and management tools. So, this is the outline for the first module, where we'll be covering cloud models, cloud benefits and considerations, and cloud services. Talking about cloud models, uh, so these are the objectives of this module. So, what is cloud computing? So it's just using someone else's computer remotely, and yes, the delivery of computing services over the internet that helps us, having flexibility of resources and much more benefits. And compute, networking, storage, analytics is one of the, we can say, main services. So what is public cloud? So that's owned by cloud services and hosting providers. They provide us resources and services to multiple organizations and users, and that can be accessed via secure networks connection, and the security aspect of that is being taken care by the provider itself. Talking about private cloud, this is a type of solution wherein you create a organizations create their cloud environment in their own data centers, and the organization is responsible for the operating services they provide, and they do not provide access to the users outside the organization. So that is one thing. When you talk about hybrid cloud, it is basically the combination of public and private clouds to allow the applications to run, and as per the configuration desired. Let's have a quick look over the all of these three types, having some comparison. So when you in case of public cloud, you don't need any more calculation to when you want to scale up applications. You can quickly provision and deprovision as per the requirement, and you do also have the features where things get automatically managed when, let's say, auto scaling and things like that. And yes, here you pay for only what you use. Coming towards the private cloud, it requires that the hardware, hardware and maintenance must be taken care by you. And then organizations have complete control over their resources and security. Yes, they can do the configuration as they want, as per their own standards. And yes, then they are only responsible for the hardware maintenance and updating in each and every aspect of it. When it comes to hybrid cloud, this provides the utmost flexibility. Now let's say you want to use some Azure services, but you also want to use or make use of some services which are present in some other public cloud. So yes, with the combination of the two cloud providers, you can achieve this hybrid cloud scenario. And yes, organizations determine where they want to run their applications, and controlling security compliance are legal requirements. Now let's have a look over cloud benefits and considerations. So the benefits includes high availability. You can ensure with the features with the features provided by the platform that your application is available at all times. And whatever the traffic might come over there, you configure configure the services accordingly, so that even if there's a high huge traffic, your provider will make sure to maintain the application highly accessible at all times. When we talk about scalability, yes, you can scale up and scale down the resources as per the requirements. And elasticity accordingly, you can increase and decrease the resources. Then agility, yes, you can move your resources. And disaster recovery, wherein let's say for some data now you have your application deployed or across various data centers. So even if the one data center or one region goes down, your application will still be running in other regions. So that's the importance of it. And we will be discussing about the capex and opex in the upcoming slides. And yes, consumption based model. Yes, so these are the benefits we already talked about: availability, scalability, yes, global reach, agility, disaster recovery, fault tolerance, elasticity, customer latency capabilities, and cost considerations. Yes, you will get you will basically have those recommendations coming on which services you can save up. And yes, it also shows you, even if you haven't deployed it, but it also shows you how much cost you will incur if you use this particular service for a particular amount of time. And yes, service to service, the metrics keep changing. And yes, the security aspects. So comparing capex and opex, which being capital expenditure and operational expenditure. So capex is the upfront spending of money on the physical infrastructure, which comes true in the private cloud scenario. And yes, cost from capex have a value that decreases over time. Yes, every hardware over a period of time might the efficiency of that might reduce over a period of time. Coming to as operation expense, wherein you spend on products and services as needed, pay as you in a as a pay as you go model. The the amount of services you need for your application, your infrastructure accordingly. And yes, they get built immediately. So that was one good point. Talking about the consumption based model. So this actually means pay as you go. You only pay for what you use. You are not charged for charge anything when you are not using it. Nothing. And this gives you better cost predictions, yes. And 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 prices with respect to individual services and resources are provided to you. And as said, billing is based on the actual usage. Now let's move on to the cloud services. These are the objectives we will cover in this upcoming slides. So talking about infrastructure as a service. So i- in this particular model, you will be renting the servers, virtual machines, storage, networks, operating system from a cloud provider, right? So, as shown in the picture, you can have a look in this. We'll be using these. So the provider will give us these resources, and in this particular model, the whole configuration is dependent upon us, how we want to configure it. So the complete access towards that. In the platform as a service model, wherein we you will have the, yes, the infrastructure services, but then above that layer you will have platform as service layer, wherein you will be only focusing on your application. You will be building it, you will be testing it across, and you will be deploying your applications. You won't be needing to manage the underlying infrastructure. That will be taken care by your provider. Software as a service model. So just to give the example, Microsoft 365, email, calendars. So these are everything underlying that is managed by the provider, right? So in the same manner, you will be we have this model. Yes. So in IaaS, I have this comparison. So in IaaS, just as I told you, it is the most flexible cloud service, because you have the privilege of configuring each and everything as per your requirements, as per your own standards, and configure and manage the hardware of your application. In platform as service model, you only focus on your application, and all the underlying infrastructure is managed by the your provider. And yes, in software as a service, it's a pay as you go pricing model, wherein you pay only for what you use. And yes, coming towards the shared responsibility model, you can see within these two colors we have properly I marked them. So yes, on the on-premises private cloud, you need to manage each and everything listed here, while in infrastructure as a service, you need to manage all of these, and compute, networking, and storage is managed by the your cloud provider. Wherein in the platform as a service, you manage only your data and access and applications. The rest everything is managed by your provider. While in the software as a service model, you only manage data and access. Rest everything your cloud provider will manage. Coming towards serverless computing. So when I say serverless, it doesn't mean that there's no server, right? But rather it means that all of those are managed services. So you will only have your application. You'll be only focusing on your application, and you'll only be seeing it. But the whole underlying infrastructure, you won't be knowing in which particular server it is running, because that's all managed by your provider, and they are running in your internal servers. So such services are Azure Functions, wherein you run your services, and not the underlying platform infrastructure. It creates infrastructure based on an event. Yes, it's an event driven service. When you talk about Azure Logic Apps, so basically it's a service wherein you can have your application, and yes, again, the whole of the infrastructure will be managed by the Logic Apps service. Yeah. So this we are towards the end of this module one, and we discussed public, private, and hybrid cloud models. We discussed some features from high availability to elasticity to disaster recovery and pay as you go model benefits. Then these are the models: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and serverless, and a combination, and the share responsibility. Let's proceed with the module two. And yes, we will be learning the following concepts in this particular module, and let's dive into it. Yeah. So these are the particular objectives we'll be covering in this module. So regions. So we have 60 plus regions across 140 countries, and regions are basically one or more data centers in the closest regions, in the closest areas. And yes, they provide you the flexibility and scale to reduce the customer latency. Latency is one very important aspect, because uh, the time the your end user requires to access your application uh, results into the overall user experience. If your end user is able to access your application in a very snappy manner, very quickly, things are loading up and not taking much time. So therein you give your user a good user experience. So that is what I'm talking about here. And yes, you can preserve your data with a comprehensive compliance offering. Talking about region pairs, yes, so we have at least 300 miles of separation between the region pairs. And yes, automatic replication of some services can be set up. And yes, prioritize region recovery in the event of outage. So we can set up our requirements accordingly, and it will perform. And yes, updates are being rolled out to whatever the configuration you are done for your regions. And yes, that will help us minimize the downtime. Sorry, I'm little sick, so yeah, please bear with me. Yeah, talking about availability options. Uh, so we have this SLA, which is a service level agreement, wherein your cloud provider and the organization using that uh, platform have this service level agreement, wherein they tell us how for maximum how much time the outage can happen. And according to those compliances set, both parties need to agree and also perform. So once if the SLA is breached, you will either get the compensation amount, or yes, they can reduce your bill. So accordingly, that's completely an agreement between those two parties. Yes, so you can see VM with premium storage and single VM. So it can be easily lift and shifted. And when we talk about availability zones, so it's protection from entire data center failures. So that's one data center constitutes two VMs, that's second, and that's third. And when we talk about multi-region disaster recovery, so that's what helps us uh, achieve the disaster recovery scenario. So we have this protection and also the data residency boundaries. Let me take a sip of water. Yeah. Now coming to the availability zones, so it can provide us protection against the downtime due to data center failure, as I already discussed. And yes, we physically separate data center within the same regions. And yes, each data center has its own policy and their connected networks. So talking about Azure resources now, able to build cloud solutions, virtual machine storage accounts, virtual networks, app services, SQL databases, and functions. Resource groups. So resource group, understand it just like a container which is used to manage and aggregate the resources in a single unit. So now say you have a and you deploy them in different networks, different virtual machines for those three applications. So for that, I'm just telling one scenario. There can be multiple. So there you can segregate all of those resources in resource group one, wherein your app, everything related to your app one will reside. Resource group two, wherein your app two resources will reside, and resource group three, wherein your resource three resources will reside. Yeah, talking about Azure Resource Management. So it provides us a management layer that enables you to create, update, and delete your resources in Azure subscription. And yes, we, as you can see here, we have our uh, in the middle we have Azure Resource Manager, which also requires authentication. Yes, then we have data store, web app, virtual machine service manager in the below layer, and above that, to communicate with our Azure 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 account, or let's say our Azure portal. So we have these SDKs, software development kits for. So you can use Azure PowerShell, you can use Azure CLI, and then while Azure portal and REST clients can directly access the Azure Resource Manager. Coming towards the subscription. So yes, we have these subscriptions wherein you can have authenticated and authorized access to your Azure accounts. So with respect to resources also, that can be configured. uh, and yes, we have a billing body wherein you can separate billing reports and invoices for each subscriptions. Can provision and with specific subscriptions. So this comes in hand in wherein, as you can see in the this particular example. So we have, you have an Azure account here, then you have created three subscriptions, which is actually best practice to keep to let's say keep a track of the expenses and everything. So you have this dev subscription, test and production subscription, then you have below that billing account, then billing profiles wherein the invoice and payment will be generated, and then it will be mapped to your Azure subscriptions. So that's how it works. Yeah, so we'll be doing this in the next. Management groups. So management groups can include our multiple Azure subscriptions, and these subscriptions inherit the conditions applied to the management group. So whatever the configurations you create in this management groups, all the underlying subscriptions, and yes, the layer by layer resources, resource groups and then resources will have to will abide by the policies you have created. And we have 10,000 management groups that can be supported in a single directory. That's the limit, and which is really good. You there can be scenarios very less likely that you will cross that number, and management group tree can support up to 6 levels of that. Core Azure workload products. So we will be covering the benefits and usage of these the below services listed. So let's proceed with that. So Azure Compute Services. It's an on-demand computing service that provides us computing resources such as disk, processors, memory, networking, operating system. These are the core services. Yes. So Azure virtual machines are software emulations on physical computers, right? So you get a virtual processor, memory, storage, and networking, which is all managed by your cloud provider. You just simply use it. And infrastructure as a service offers total control on and the customizations. Azure App Services. So Azure App Service is a fully managed platform. To That means that your cloud provider will manage everything for you. In our case, Microsoft Azure, it will manage everything for us, and we'll only focus on our application. So it also gives us a platform where we can directly bring our code. We don't need to uh, configure an environment for, let's say, Node.js, then Java, Python, and or PHP. So we'll have we getting the environment ready, and we can simply bring our code there and test our application or build it, and even deploy and check how's the functionality and everything. So this comes under the platform as service offering with enterprise grade performance. Security and compliance requirements are very well taken care of. Coming towards Azure Container Services. Yes, as it stated, it's a lightweight and virtualized environment that do not require operating system management and respond to changes on demand. So you can have Azure Container Instances. It's again a platform as service offering that runs container in Azure without needing to manage the virtual machine or additional services. So again, uh, it will be completely feasible to use it. And then coming towards Azure Kubernetes services, which yes, helps us to deal with our containers when you have them in large numbers. So coming towards Azure Virtual Desktop, it's a desktop and app which runs in the cloud. So by this, you can have a full desktop virtualization environment without having to run any additional gateway servers, and then you can publish unlimited host pools to accommodate the diverse workloads. Yes, and yes, it can help you reduce the cost with pooled and multi-session resources. Azure Networking. So Azure Network, a virtual network, we call it as VNet in short, and it helps enables the Azure users to communicate with each other and the internet on-premise networks. So in this particular service, you basically configure the whole traffic which will be flowing in your environment, uh, uh, configuring firewall rules and so on. So virtual private network gateway, VPN in short, and it is used to send the input between Azure Virtual Network and an on-premises location over the public internet. So yes, when I say on premises are the servers uh, which are being there in the organization's data center, and they are taking in use of Azure services also. So they have configured a connectivity between on-premises and Azure services, and this particular VPN gateway will help us communicate via public internet but in a secure manner, and that security will be managed from the Azure side. Azure Express Route. So it extends on-premise network into Azure over a private connection that is facilitated by a connectivity provider. So you can make into use of other connectivity providers if you wish to. Coming towards Azure Storage Services. Container storage, often known as blob. So it's optimized for storing massive amounts of unstructured data, such as text or binary data. So just to keep in mind, it is used for unstructured data types. And coming to disk storage, so this is basically uh, disk storage. Under this, you get disk which you can use for virtual machines as a boot disk for applications or however required. Talking about Azure Files, it helps us set up a highly available network file share, NFS, often known as, and that can be accessed using a standard server message flow, which is SMB protocol. Now we have this storage access tiers, which are three. Coming towards the hot storage access tier, it is optimized for storing data that is accessed frequently. So let's say you have your application data which is being stored in any storage, and you frequently you frequently need to access it. So in that case, we'll be preferring to use the hot storage access tier. Coming towards the cool one here, we will be making use of it when when our data access is infrequent. That means that uh, you may access it once or twice in 30 days period. And and then we have the archive storage access tiers, wherein we use it that the data which is important to you, uh, but it is not accessed very frequently. You rarely access it, and a period like once or twice in 180 days, or even about more than that. Coming towards Azure database services, so we have this Azure Cosmos database, which is a, yes, globally distributed database service, and which can elastically and independently scales up throughput and storage. So you can have huge amounts of data here, and which will automatically scale up and down as per the required throughput and the storage requirements. Talking about Azure SQL Database, it's a, yes, as you know, it's a relational database service, and 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 and, uh, and yes, again, you will be having the versions of it, so you can use the one you wish to. And then we have Azure Database for MySQL, which is again a fully managed service for database service for app developers. And then we have Azure Database for PostgreSQL. Again, it's a relational database service, and then based on open source Postgres database engine. Yeah. So you can use any of them as per your requirements and scenarios. Talking about Azure SQL Managed Instance. So it allows us the existing SQL servers to lift and shift their on-premises applications to the cloud with a minimal application database changes. So when customers want to shift their SQL instances uh, to from their on-prem to moving towards the Azure platform, definitely for better performance and better efficiency. So it's fully managed and everything platform as a service. Again, you don't need to manage the underlying hardware. Azure will do it for you. Then it possesses all the capabilities like automatic patching, version updates, automated backups, and high availability. When we say automated patching, let's say if there's any vulnerabilities, so they will be fixed by from Azure end. Yes, then as we have the newer versions, yes, again it will be switched to the latest version. And yes, automated backups can be configured as per the requirement. And yes, highly available scenario I have already discussed. And yes, you can exchange your licenses for discounted rates on SQL managed by Azure Hybrid Benefit. So we do have a Azure Marketplace where it allows customers to find, try, purchase, and provision applications from hundreds of leading service providers. So this is what we discussed in this particular module regarding the regions management tools, then multiple services and marketplace. Lakshit, we are going good, right?
Yes, yes, everything is fine.
Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Now we are towards our module 3, and this is what we'll be covering in this Azure solutions. So these are the objectives which will be covered in the further slides: IoT, Synapse Analytics, machine learning, serverless computing solutions, and Azure DevOps, and so on. So Azure Internet of Things. So uh, in this particular pool of services, which get we get ability for devices to garner and relay information for data analysis. So with in most cases, with when we say about IoT, we keep capturing the time series data, and time series data, and accordingly we can, as per the data, the more data we have, we can do the better analysis, right? So having it all in one place is really important. So there's a service named Azure IoT Central, which is a fully managed global IoT SaaS solution that makes it easy to connect, monitor, and manage IoT assets at scale. Then we have IoT Hub, which is again a managed service and hosted in a cloud that acts as a central message hub for bidirectional communication. Yes, data being going from servers to IoT systems, and from IoT systems to our portal. Yeah. Then we have Azure Sphere, which is a secured. When we have explicitly mentioned secured here, that means that an extra layer of security is being added here, while it is not present in the above two. And you can use a high level application platform which built in communication security features for internet connected devices. Coming towards big data analytics, so Azure Synapse Analytics, which is cloud based enterprise data warehouse. When we have Azure HD Insight, a fully managed open source analytics service for enterprises, and Azure Databricks, which is a Spark based analytics service which can be used for batch workloads. Coming towards artificial intelligence and machine learning, so Azure Machine Learning, it basically is again a fully cloud-based service to develop, train, and deploy your machine learning models. You don't need to configure the environment and all. It will be done by Azure end, and you can directly do do everything related to machine learning there. Talking about coordinator services, it helps us to see, hear, speak, and understand, interprets the user needs. Coming to the Azure Bot Service, it's a intelligent and grade bots which you can use for your requirements. Coming towards serverless computing, we have Azure Functions and Azure Logic Apps. So Azure Function is a event-based code running your service and not the underlying infrastructure. So whatever the events you configure in the functions, so once the function is invoked, it will be running that particular piece of code. Coming to those Azure Logic Apps, uh, it gives you an environment where you can have your application deployed, and it will automate orchestrate tasks and anything your application wants to do, that can be configured. So coming now, you can develop your apps with DevOps and GitHub. So there's a special offering, Azure DevOps, which wherein you can collaborate between your pipelines, Kanban boards, automated cloud build loads across your organization, and then organization and your application, of course. Then coming towards GitHub, yes, we all know it's a software development hosting with version control platform, source code management, and bugs tasks management. Coming towards GitHub Actions for Azure, so you can automate software workload to build, test, and deploy from within GitHub. Azure DevTest Lab. This is an offering wherein you can quickly create the environments Azure, and you can, while minimizing waste and controlling costs. So it's again a managed service, and everything will be taken care by Azure itself. Coming towards the Azure management tools, then we have so we'll be covering these objectives in this for the slides. So we have Azure Portal, PowerShell. We do also have a mobile app. Then we have a command line interface, Azure REST API, and Azure Cloud Shell. And then we have this Azure Resource Manager. So these are all the walkthroughs here, wherein how you can create a VM using ARM template. Go into the portal, explore the gallery, and deploy it and verify your virtual machine deployment. These are the steps listed for creating a VM with PowerShell. Yeah, you can easily find those commands in Microsoft Learn portal, and yes, it's a really good documentation, I would say. So you can execute those commands, and yes, you can provision your virtual machines or any of the resources you want using the PowerShell. And yes, we do also have this service called Azure Advisor recommendations, which will keep giving you recommendations as per your application, your configuration, like where doing what steps can reduce your costs, doing what steps can uh, uh, doing what steps can reduce your cost and increase the efficiency of your application or your whole infrastructure. We have these steps for creating a VM with the Azure CLI. So yes, you can even have locally install the Azure CLI and then use it, execute those commands, and yes, you'll be good to go. Yes, talking about Azure Advisor, it as I said, it analyzes the deployed Azure resources and makes recommendations based on best practices. So here we say best practices, right? So Azure will make sure to keep best practices intact, and then only help you optimize the Azure deployments. It will be taking care of reliability, security, performance, cost, and operational excellence. So coming towards Azure Monitor, so it maximizes the availability and performance of applications and services by collecting, analyzing, and acting on telemetry from cloud and on-premise environments. So it's a service which helps you monitor every your whole infrastructure. You can have application insights, how well it is working, which part of the day we have a huge traffic, and so on. There are multiple possibilities. And then we have log analytics, wherein you can keep checking your application logs, and that can really help you identify if there are any errors in your application. Yes, you can set up smart alerts by which you can keep alerts of, let's as per the requirement. Then we have automation actions and customized dashboards, yes, to have a holistic view of all of the resources which are deployed. So Azure Service Health, it helps us evaluate the impact of Azure service issues with personal guidance, support, and notifications, and issue resolution updates. Yes, it provides a personalized view, and we have communication regarding outages, plant maintenance, and other related devices which will be given us by Azure. Talking about Azure Resource Manager ARM templates. So these templates are basically JavaScript object notation JSON files, and that can be yes used to create and deploy your Azure infrastructure without having to write an incomplete data analytics it's easy to understand. And we have repeatable results orchestration, modularized files, which helps keeping the code easy to understand for everyone. And then you have the built-in validation. You need not to use any third party tool to do the validation part. And yes, that code is exportable. So we have resource providers, then there's the Azure Resource Manager, and then you will have this Azure Resource Manager template, which can be, and it can also be infrastructure as a code, wherein we have multiple implemented report calls, which can be help deploy the infrastructure as per requirement. So that's the review of your module 3. We reviewed IoT, big data analytics and development tools, resource manager, and monitoring tools.
So, okay, so Amman, am I audible to you? So
Yes, yes.
before going to some next module, we have some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, yeah,
So
we are actually done with the session, and I guess we are right on time. So we have 10 minutes remaining, so we can take the questions. Yes.
so Abhishek is saying, like, if you can describe multi-cloud in 2 lines, what is multi-cloud?
Okay, okay, okay. Regarding multi-cloud, as we said, yes, when you make use of services from 2 or 3 different clouds, right? As I said, let's say you don't find a suitable service in Azure, so you want to use that particular and you know that this particular service which is my requirement, that can be used from GCP. So yes, you will make use of that. So just to have a definition asked, so using resources from different cloud platforms si- uh, simultaneously.
Okay, perfect. So next question is from Sudhir. Sudhir is saying, does Azure Marketplace provides logs of instances or failures, traces datasets for research purpose, or where we can we get the datasets?
Yeah, basically Azure Marketplace is a service wherein you can find find solutions from various providers, right? So each and every provider has got their own limitations and their own benefits, right? So it will really matter from service to service.
Okay, perfect. The last question we have is, what is non-template infrastructure as a code?
Non-template. Okay. Yeah. So basically, we have this. As per today's session, where I will tell you these two methods. One is the Azure Resource Manager template, right? Then we make into use of Terraform, which is a infrastructure as a code tool. So wherein we make use of the Terraform modules as per the resource requirements, and then we write a code. So just to show you my, I will just check. I had created this. Yeah. So I had created this small project or task, you can say. So you people can go through this repo, and where I have actually described properly how, like, what is the, this is basically a Terraform code to deploy 3-tier architecture on Azure, and people interested might want to go through this repo. And yes, you can reach out to me if any questions you have. Shall I share this link in?
Yes, you can just share this link in private chat if you want.
Okay, sure. Yes, yeah, you got it right.
Okay. So if anyone is having any questions to ask to Aman, then she can ask. We still have some minutes left with us.
Yes, guys, please don't hesitate, and like you can throw up your questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Okay, as we can see, there is no question as of now. So, guys, I hope you like the session and really beautiful insights Aman gave about the Azure basics and fundamentals. And here is the feedback form that you have to fill about the session, and you have to give your feedback about the speaker and everything. So we can just improve our next session onwards. So thank you for joining, guys. Thank you, Aman. Thank you for being our speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining in, and I would really congratulate Azure Developer Community and Reskill for organizing this and giving me an opportunity to help contribute in the way possible I could. Yes, we are open to further sessions if required, and yes, folks, you are all good to share your learnings across in the platforms, and yes, you can also tag me. Thank you. Thanks for joining in.